Gordon had arrived back at the sidings very tired. He was just going to sleep when Thomas came up in his cheeky way. "Wake up, lazy bones, do some hard work for a change. You can't catch me." And off he ran laughing. Instead of going to sleep again, Gordon thought how he could get back at Thomas.
Gordon is based on the LNER A1 and A3 class locomotives, more specifically the Flying Scotsman. Gordon is actually the last remaining brother of the Flying Scotsman, and at one point is even mentioned as being the Mallard's cousin. He would make his debut in 1945 in the Railway Series book The Three Railway Engines, and can be described as being a pompous but overall reliable engine. Gordon at a time would face a lot of criticism, with some people claiming that he was more of an antagonist than a protagonist, or at least having the traits of such. However, I and others would argue that this is almost essential for Gordon. He's not meant to be a perfect character, but when compared to the other locomotives on the Sodor Railway, it can definitely be argued that he carries a level of distinguished, and personally I think this should be a given with his basis being the Flying Scotsman. Audrey would actually make a Gordon for his model railway. Originally, the locomotive was a trying model from 1958, a Princess Royal class locomotive. However, Audrey would try to convert the locomotive into an A3. The conversion itself wouldn't end up being the most successful, and resulted in a severely butchered up trying Princess Royal, which would still retain many of the Princess Royal features. The first Gauge 1 model of Gordon was actually a custom build, being made to run on Gauge 1 track for the unaired pilot. The model was built with the Perspex body shell by model maker Martin Gill, and was painted using a glossy car body paint, and following this being lined with red automotive pinstripe tape. His numbers were actually custom cut vinyl stickers. The axle guards on Gordon's tender would be made by 10 Mile, and the chassis would be built from scratch. It was never tested before being filmed in front of the camera, and proved to be quite unreliable. But after the first season will be approved for production, Gordon will be fitted with the new chassis that was made by Markland, donored from the BR-78. The footplate slope will be cut not to hang as low, which allowed for the buffer beam to be raised up and pushed further back. This was likely done so the buffers would line up better with rolling stock. The front of the boiler was cut to move the face further back, and of course eventually lamp irons were added. Gordon's Perspex model was at first AC powered. This would require the polarity switch to be mounted in the tender. Much like the other engines though, he would eventually be replaced to DC during a refurbishment period, likely to allow easier running as well as maintenance. The scratch built chassis will be cut up and used for scrap dressing. With the 10th season came 2 new models of Gordon, both being made out of brass. This was due to the original model being 22 years old at this point, and a tight filming schedule meant that there was very little room for repairs. Gordon's new model will be equipped with a CNC aluminum chassis, powered by a DC motor, and from this point onwards the Perspex model would only appear in scenes that would damage these models. 21 different facial expressions will be sculpted for Gordon, however only 19 will be used on screen. The faces were first sculpted in clay, and from that resin cast would be made from a silicone mold. Some of Gordon's faces have also been seen on other engines mistakenly. 3 of Gordon's original faces are now owned by Twitter user Thomas Tankmerch. One of Gordon's brass models is now at display at Hara Model Railway Museum. It had previously been on display at Nitrogen Studios, with his concerned face on, but the current whereabouts of the other models are unknown. A close-up model of Gordon was made to interact with the close-up figures, especially with the driver and fireman interacting with Gordon. The close-up model even featured a smoke-emitting whistle. Many of the close-up models weren't complete models, and the Gordon model wouldn't necessarily be complete until the 8th season. In seasons 1 to 7, only Gordon's cabin tender were built for the driver and fireman scenes. However, in Squeak, Rattle, and Roll, Gordon did have a chassis built with wheels, rods, and a valve gear for inspection scenes, thus sort of completing the Gordon model, just minus a visible face. In 2009, the series would introduce CGI. Using photographs of Gordon's Gauge 1 model, Gordon would be resculpted in Maya, a 3D animation and modeling software. This would replace his long-standing live-action model. In 2016, a new render of Gordon would be made by Arc Productions for the special The Great Race. This would depict him in a streamlined casing, with everything but the face being completely changed. This shooting star render would only appear in The Great Race. This special also saw the debut of Gordon's brother, the Flying Scotsman, who reused parts of Gordon's standard render for his own. If you're asking me, they only made Gordon look like this shit so he could stand out a little bit more from the Flying Scotsman, and so we'd be cursed with this garbage. Gordon's CGI model was identical to his Gauge 1 model, but has some slight modifications. engines. In Season 23, Gordon's CGI interior cab was reused for Lorenzo's. Though it's always sad to see the models go, I would argue that Gordon's render is probably one of the better ones. Though Gordon may not be my personal favorite engine, he will always remain one of the most iconic and important to the Thomas & Friends series. Rebecca may be trying to steal this man's job, but I'm thankful that she's not taking a role that's replacing him. Others did not get that same courtesy. Yeah, Mattel, we're still mad about it. Bunch of dick. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video as much as the other ones, and be sure to be on the lookout for the next episode. A question I normally get on this series is who I'm doing next, and the way I like to do these episodes is by the engine's number. First we talked about Thomas, and then Edward and Henry, and now Gordon. Following this will be James. Finally, it took 5 episodes to get to my favorite character, goddamn, and so on and so forth. As always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.